Hey, welcome back to VBuzz. You're still here with Ruben and myself, Swarna. Now, Malaysia's non-profit sector is growing by the day as there continues to be a significant increase in demand for their services, particularly for counseling, employment, food, emergency relief, housing support, and education. As the demand grows, the challenges begin to outweigh these non-profits' capabilities in expertise, resources, and funds. Dr. Sudeep Mohandas has had over 2 decades of experience in transforming local nonprofits into well-oiled machines on par with the corporate sector, and he frequently discusses issues such as the aforementioned in published articles. He joins us today to tell us all about his cause-based enterprise, iFirst International, that is professionalizing the nonprofit sector to boost their social impact. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Sudeep. So, we know about your passion towards the non-profit organizations, not just the 2 decades that you've, worked with all and made this non-profit organization what it is today, but also, it sort of started for you back in secondary school, right? Tell us a little bit about that and how, your passion for the non-profit organization started back, while you're still schooling.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because actually during those times, I don't think it happens actually right now, but during those days, we used to actually do these things called jobathons or walkathons for school.
I was part of it, jobathon.
So there we are, you see? Well, you're my same age then.
No, I had it in my school. We had to collect like donations and things like that, right? Yeah.
So that's exactly what we used to do. So we actually were then pushed into a situation where we actually fundraise. Right? And we actually had to go passionate about our school and go to people and appeal for money and do work for that as well. So it was from that angle already, that element of actually got into me saying, hey, this is quite strategic and quite good. And I got into it very well. Of course, there was competition. I remember my first, I was able to raise 100 ringgit when I was started 6. I got a badminton racket. Yeah, so it was one of those things where they was put into,
And I remember that feeling. It was such a fulfilling sort of feeling that I had, collecting this amount of money, for a good cause. At that age, right?
Yeah, and I could see the thermometer, the barometer go up and up and up,
It's true.
Never knew whether it spilled, but exactly.
Yeah.
Now, but you kind of have a huge hand in kind of establishing a lot of different nonprofit organizations like the Malaysian AIDS Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, really not in terms of establishing, but if you think about the Malaysian AIDS Foundation, which actually started in 1993, around that time, there were many people actually involved in it. I came from an angle one day. I had a very cold sweat, and I woke up, and something told me to actually do something for the people who are actually suffering from AIDS. I told my mom, and she freaked out at that time. But then I decided to go and talk to my friends, and I got them together. And from there, they got motivated, and they felt, hey, this is something really good for me to do. And so we got a lot of people. We got the government, we've got the people in NGOs involved and all that. And lo and behold, what actually happened was, through that process, we actually were able to bring international players into it and create an awareness and even funding for this. So on the day, I remember when we actually established that, I was the co-chair for that time. And it was during the time of the Thomas Cup. So we actually have founded, I think, that, if I'm not mistaken, we founded that on the Thomas Cup.
Was it the year that Malaysia won?
Malaysia won 1993, 1993.
Yeah, 92, I think,
Yeah, something like that, So it was that time.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was actually not just myself, a lot of people, but that was my first time when I realized it takes a huge group of people to come together to make a difference.
But there are so many causes. Why AIDS?
I don't know. It was just one of those things. It was just some, I don't know, people call it divine intervention or someone poked me on the back. I don't know. But it was, I had many things during my time where I grew up. I wanted to do things for the community. I think it's all about humanity. That was where I was. And so why AIDS? I think maybe it was a trending thing at that point in time, maybe. But it happened. And lo and behold,
the rest is history. Yeah. So but that's the thing, because like you said, it's a collective effort by everyone who's passionate about, helping people. So we know for a fact that you have a big heart, Dr. Sudeep, and where do you think that instinct to create social impact comes from within yourself?
Well, within myself itself, it really comes from a lot of things. It comes from the fact that how I've been inspired through people, my grandparents, my family, my immediate family, my siblings, but also from the people outside, the people I mix with. One of my greatest things that happened to me was just going on a holiday with my family. And one day I actually went to this place in India, and I was actually really mesmerized when I saw a whole huge community of people with elephantiasis, suffering from elephantiasis, and this huge kind of thing. That really woke me up and realized, where am I and where are they? And it just came from within telling me that I got to do something. And we got this thing called genetic memory. I'm not so sure whether you know about this. But in genetic memory, it's all about the fact that, we think we know, we remember things of today.
Right. Yeah.
But then if you look at your actual facial expression or the way your nose looks or your eyes looks, it's actually coming from where? Maybe your ancestors, your great-grandparents and all that. That's the genetic memory I'm talking about.
Okay.
Is that something is coming down? So maybe that's what came through me. Some genetic memory came and say, hey, those days, you used to do those days? I don't know.
Wow.
Is it part of your family that they all are very...
Well, my grandfather used to do a lot of things for education. My father used to do a lot of things for healthcare. But even my outside my family and my friends, a lot of my friends do the same thing, So I guess it's, as they say, your flower attracts bees.
For sure. Now, in your experience founding and kind of transforming so many different nonprofit organizations, what are some of the main concerns or issues that these organizations seem to face?
Now let's get into the crux, because at the end of the day, when we actually get into these kind of issues, really, this is where I come in my personal view and my professional view, my own experience. And I see that a lot of people are doing great work.
Right.
That we know.
Yeah.
But a lot of things that really are not focused is what actually happens in the room. And when I say the room, I'm talking about the boardroom, I'm talking about the meeting room, I'm talking about that. Yeah. Because that few minutes, people make decisions, and those decisions could actually end up somewhere else.
Exactly.
There was a McKinsey report that showed that 35% of the impact on the ground can be scaled up if the decisions are made properly.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because, off air we were discussing about this and you're talking about how certain Fortune 500 companies with CEOs, who've been successful in the profit-making organization may not be as successful in non-profit. Why do you say that?
Yeah, so first we got to understand, when you end up as a non-profit board member, you're a volunteer. You're not paid for.
Exactly.
And secondly, the conversation that you have really in a boardroom is about mission. And if you're actually working in a non-profit organization, or for that matter, any cause-based organization, you're talking about a mission, which means that you're actually a missionary.
Wow.
If you're a missionary, then you actually have put the mission in front of you and not everything else. So on that basis, the mindset has to shift. But what happens is people who come from the corporate sector use the visionary element. I think in a non-profit, we should be focusing more on the missionary.
That's true.
Got it.
Brilliant.
Are there any other kind of issues that these organizations face, apart from the decision-making aspect of it?
Oh, yeah, problem solving, their issue. So the actual recruiting of board members is very important. Who you bring on board. There's this tendency of bringing people on board who are celebrities. There's this tendency of bringing people aboard who actually have had past experiences and done great work then. Or people who you want them to cut a ribbon or, these kind of things. But these are not the kind of people really you want in a non-profit organization. You want people who actually come to the organization, not as a retired that they've ended up with, but actually to keep working and making more of an impact on the ground. But that is a challenge for us. And so you'll see the most successful ones having board members or top management people who are still very mission-based and very focused and very energetic. But the ones that are slacking are very negative and say, look, I don't have time, I want to take care of my family, I want to do other things and all that. But they're still sitting in the board,
Right. So these are the areas that you tackle, basically.
Yeah, we try to make sure we have.
Right.
How exactly did were you inspired to come up with your own foundation or I First International, the organization?
Well, after I left, I was basically the Chief Operating Officer of WWF Malaysia for a while.
Nice.
And after I left, I was in a situation where I was looking as to what could I do more. You take another level in your life and you want to do a lot more. And I felt that for a long while I was with one organization and it was time to actually do something broader. And I was talking to my family and all that, and something happened that in that conversation, you know, things happen. You put in a lot of ingredients and voila, you end up with a different dish. Well, that's what exactly happened.
Yeah.
We came up with a different dish. And I realized that one of the things that I am good at, and I know I can do, is actually focus on the board and management areas. That's where I can bring my expertise. I know many organizations can save a lot of cancer victims, do higher education, you know, tackle all the elements of planting trees. But that's great. But who's actually helping those people make these decisions and do strategies and come up with branding and look at the focus of how they can actually scale up and go beyond just what they're doing now.
Obviously, they're the ones who need the help the most, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right, but you know, give us a clearer idea on how IFI actually works. You know, so we know it's I First International. What does that stand for, first and foremost? And also, you know, generally, what do you guys do?
So I First, actually, the term I First actually came over from my youngest brother. He's actually slow, mentally slow, and but he has a gift. Whatever he says, to me, turns out to become $1 million business.
Wow.
That's a very nice gift. I would like to be friends with him.
Yeah. So I've been always listening to certain things he says.
Yeah.
And one of the things he always says is I first. And I said, this is something I got to use. I know it's kind of cliche, the fact that we got the iPhone and iPod and all that. But he always says I first. And I said, yeah, maybe that's very important, because the I has to be signified, because when you work for a non-profit, you're not talking about the I as in your ego. And as Steve Jobs says, you've got to put the organization in front of you, not you in front of the organization. Most organizations that fail is because they put a capital I, not the small I. That's why you have the I in terms of Apple, very small I, to bring down the ego. So on that basis, we call it I First. But why international? Because we do international work.
Right.
So that's the idea, the story behind I First International, really.
And you've opened my eyes. I never knew that iPhone was spelled with a small little I there, because...
Oh my goodness.
I never knew that.
It's okay, we're in the 21st century. Jeez. Okay, anyway, why do you think it's so important for these non-profit organizations to kind of maintain or build the professionalism on par with corporate, you know, organizations? Why do you think this benefits them?
So this is the general folly that goes around. Keeping association of a non-profit together with a non-profit with a corporate, right?
Yeah.
I think we have to turn it around. And what I mean is that if you think about it, if you're doing work for humanity, you're doing work for cause. Shouldn't you actually have people who are the best kind of talent? The best kind of competent people, the people who have got highest integrity, highest transparency, highest this, because you're doing for humanity. In the corporate, would that work the same way?
Not necessarily.
But why do we compare the non-profit to a corporate? In fact, we should be comparing the corporate to the non-profit. Because that's where you should be moving. And so I'll turn it around and say it's corporates should be looking at some of the non-profits, and maybe it can be debatable. But on that subject alone, you know, I always find it. I go back to one of these great TED Talks by him, and he was saying that something that opened my eyes. He mentioned the fact that, you know, it's very strange. We actually have people who are raping the land, who are taking everything for their own benefit, right? And then they sit in a non-profit, and then they tell how you're supposed to run the non-profit. Hey, wait a minute, it doesn't work that way, right?
Exactly.
You should be getting lower salary, but when we work in the corporate, we should be. But if you're doing mission work, you shouldn't be paid higher. Shouldn't you be getting a better home? Shouldn't we be getting more because you're doing so-called mission work? But it doesn't. It's strange. You're supposed to be in a dilapidated place. You're supposed to be suffering. You should get very low pay. I think that has to shift.
Right. The perception of that.
Perception has to shift.
But a lot of people in these organizations are volunteers. How is it, you know, possible to change their mindset to kind of say that I'm not getting paid for it, but I still need to do my best?
No, that's the challenge, and that's why I First is here. We want to make sure that we change this thinking to make people realize that it's a professional job. it's a profession in its own right, and people who are doing this for a good cause, and therefore they should be given all the skills, all the talent, all the focus.
And speaking of people, you know, Dr. Sudeep, I did go through the IFA's website yesterday. It was interesting to see that you had all this videos, like Q&A videos that you had on YouTube that was posted into your website. You mentioned something about robotics and how this day and age, you know, with technology and everything, robotics is actually taking place of human beings in jobs, even in non-profits, you know, not just in the human resource sector. Share with us about that.
Yeah. You know, this is something that artificial intelligence now is right here, right? And we can see now that robotics now. I get confused between botox and robotics. Yeah. But anyway, robotics on its own, right? You're moving forward with robotics, and then therefore things are changing in terms of human resources. And what do I mean by that? Really, if you think about it, right? Today, we can actually take a lot of robotic aspirations in terms of machinery, people who can, machines that actually do a lot of work, and replace them with human beings.
Okay.
And in a non-profit world, that actually is going to save a lot of cost. But the problem now we have in a non-profit world is that when they look at the cost, when they look at money and the expense about it, what is actually happening is that they look at money as a cost. They don't look at it as an investment.
Understand.
That's the issue. And when you look at it as a cost, you'll always say, I can't afford. But if you look at it as an investment, then you say, hey, this is going to give me an ROI or return on investment later on. And so that's the element that we need to look at, you know. So robotics is not just in terms of machines. You're talking about using, you know, if you're having the blind people using certain elements that they can do their work better. We're talking about the deaf people using certain elements that they can use better, you know, artificial limbs and what have you. So you don't need to actually now have people with, you know, as you can say, you know, thing.
Now, you did mention earlier that the boards play a very important role in the, you know,
in of course the non-profit organization itself.
How well they do. That's what I'm trying to say. Right. But you are going to have a workshop soon?
Yes.
For the top leadership boards in non-profit organizations.
That's
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So last year we actually organized and we took this this group of us decided to actually move forward. I call them the Avengers.
Right.
Nice. Yeah. I'll tell you that later. But I think the point is the workshop, right? The workshop basically is really to get all the top leadership and board members into a room and for us to actually open their eyes and their thinking that actually there's a whole new world when you actually manage a non-profit or a foundation, or for that matter. And so that was a resounding success because we added on to the workshop a mentor-mentee program.
Oh, okay.
That after 3 months, we actually got them all together and to talk about this, what's actually happening.
Right.
That was a resounding. So we decided to have another one, and that's going to happen next month.
Brilliant.
And we're hoping that we get a lot of people actually interested to tie up onto this event.
And what interests me also about going through the website at IFI specifically, like when you do meetings like this, you do introduce the non-profit oath, right?
That's
Instead of just a basic guideline that you would expect, you have this thing called the non-profit oath. Share with us about that. You know, what the non-profit oath is all about.
Saya berikrar. Okay. So basically, really, the oath is really an alternative because we have a lot of people who go into the non-profit sector. And as I mentioned early on, you're expecting somebody with some integrity, somebody who has got some element of good acumen. To have that, what actually happens is for that kind of person, really what is important is that these people, before they even take on the responsibility and role of being a missionaire, all right, they should actually say, I'm taking an oath. Therefore, I pledge that these are certain things I'm going to do, because ultimately humanity is going to benefit.
Exactly.
So when you do that, it's like saying I'm open to whatever it is. I will do like the Donald Trump and show you my taxes. You know.
Right. And what about the people who are I would say like less compliant in that sense? You know, you have this thing where you call the purging system, right? Where the process of purging may sound quite harsh, but you know, tell us how does taking that particular step actually help?
Yeah, so the purging system really is all about the fact that we tend to look at people as in for the future.
Right.
But really we've got to understand as an organization grows, people's competence don't fit into the future. Today I may be fitting into today's competence for the next 5 years, but if I carry on the way I am, for tomorrow I may not.
That's true.
right? And that we have to recognize. So either we change, we build on new skills or whatever, but in most of non-profits, they don't have that ability to invest.
That's true.
So they need a new team.
Right.
So that element of purging is necessary so that you get a move away and a new team comes on. But of course, what happens is resistance to change. I need to keep the old people. I have all that. So I'm really talking about a whole dynamics of shifting, you know.
And that happens regardless in any sort of organization.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. In fact, you have to work with the times. I mean, if you look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they've, if I understand from the interview I heard, it was basically they have set up the foundation for a time.
Wow.
And the reason why it's set up for a time is basically because it says, when I go and I leave this world, somebody else can do my job better.
That's true.
Yeah.
Why do I need to keep it for perpetuity? You know?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of like how, you know, they're looking at the future of, you know, whether they're there or not there in the future. It's going to be self-sustainable in that sense, right?
But people are afraid of change. I think that definitely
that's the problem.
needs to change. But how do you think we can get more millennials involved in nonprofit organizations?
So, and I'm glad you asked that question as well, because actually I did a doctorate on that, and it was basically on the Gen Y, and why would they actually be interested to actually join a nonprofit. My study at that time showed that really there were a few things. One, they had to be passionate, but passion comes with compassion.
Yeah.
And so that was a very important element. And then the other one is careers. There must be something that attaches to careers. Careers is something in what we generally think is the fact that they move up in promotions, go up. But actually, it can be a lateral thing. It can be more responsibility. It can be a shift in the designation. It need not be necessarily a linear move. It can be in different kinds of directions.
Yeah. Doctor, you mentioned there's going to be some programs coming up in the next week or so. Tell us, you know, about some of the collaborations that IFI is actually working on at the moment, you know, to create larger impact in the non-profit sector.
So some of the things that we are actually doing right now is really we are helping a lot of the organizations understand how to build a strategy. I mean, that's very important. The roadmap of where they want to go and how do they actually align whatever they do to that roadmap. I mean, and putting cost to it, putting the human resource to it, and very important. A lot of these organizations, when they set up, they're very keen on the impact.
Right.
But how do you do it and how you look at the details and following up with that, that's very little focus. So we actually put a lot of that. Even understanding the premium, their brand, and knowing that a brand can actually fetch a premium. People don't realize that, you know, because people put actually they attach a premium to a mug or to whatever, but that's a cost. And you can raise that through a non-profit organization.
Wow.
Right. That's brilliant.
Looking at the fine details of how, you know, that's just amazing, Dr. Sudeep. And thank you so much for being here today to explain to us how this actually works, because, you know, you're fighting the good fight for those non-profits out there. And obviously, there's not many of you guys out there who are doing this. And hope this
so professionally.
Yeah,
I think that's amazing.
Obviously, I hope this inspires you to, you know, to start your non-profit, because
you.
you're not
Thank
alone.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sudeep.
Sure.
All right, there you have it, Dr. Sudeep.
Huge insight into the world of nonprofit. I never realized that, you know, the professional aspect of it is equally as important as the hands-on. So that's great.
Right, we will take a short break. When we come back, did you know about the rainforest? Oh yeah, you did mention it just now, right?
I did.
Yeah, we have Melvin and Ida Talib of the Belum Temenggo conservation team of the oldest rainforest in the world, literally.
The world.
Yes, and they're going to be here in a very short while. Just don't go anywhere, stay tuned.